One of the things that's very distinguishing about Elon is that he, is one of the few CEOs, we used to say, who not only can run a space company, but he actually can build the rocket ship. Women want to make money just like men, right? So, I mean, that's the ultimate purpose. There aren't that many role models out there of, successful women investors that can inspire them, to take that first step.
Hello listeners, today we are thrilled to have Betty Liu, a financial journalism powerhouse, as our guest, former executive vice chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, who is now serving on boards of not one but two public companies. Betty shares her remarkable journey, impactful interviews and insights from her book, Work Smart, in this special episode. Joining me as co-host today is our esteemed editor-in-chief, Alon, for a dynamic conversation filled with success stories and inspiration. Betty, Matty, welcome along.
Hello.
Hi, Sam. Hi, Maddie. So great to be with you. And Maddie, it's been so many years. I'm so glad that we're reconnected on this platform. So thank you for asking me to join.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a pleasure, and for me, it's probably very exciting days because it's always good to speak with you. So
same here.
Let's get into it. Matty, I guess we can come to you first. How about we start with you recounting the fascinating story of how you and Betty crossed paths and came together?
Yeah, it's a funny story. Well, funny story. It's a life story, but I've been invited to Warren breakfast, which he calls it like out of town friends, and basically just bring some friends after everybody's taking off from Omaha. So all meeting get together, and the way it's set up is just we sit in a round table, so each person there is sort of Warren Buffett's friend, and obviously Betty is one of them, and a long-term one, and apparently I sat next to Betty in this same table. So then we found ourselves 2 hours eating together with few more people sitting with us. We just found interest really fast with many other people that I found interest over the years, and obviously Betty as well. And I think Betty's story is fascinating in general as a person. And, Betty's coming from Bloomberg, and I'm coming in my career from the financial world. So definitely watching Betty every time discussing with this or that leader. And I guess that's the way we came to know each other.
It's interesting for me. I remember that too, and I remember interviewing you while I was at Bloomberg as well. So now the tables are turned, at least for this time.
Yeah, I agree.
Those were fun times.
Betty, having interviewed a diverse range of leaders from Elon Musk to Warren Buffett, what key insights have you gleaned about from the various interviews that you've done and the variations in leadership styles?
Yes, Sam. A lot of people ask me that question because I spent many years at Bloomberg TV, and some of the folks that I mentioned that you mentioned were people that I interviewed on a regular basis. And what I found, and this is something that I wrote about also in Work Smarts, is that you couldn't have picked two more different leaders, right, between Elon Musk and Warren Buffett. But I think that there are some commonalities between the two of them. So one is that they're obviously both visionary leaders. Buffett has changed the game on investing, and Elon has changed the game on many fronts, from electric cars to space programs, and the list goes on. The other thing that I think is pretty interesting about the two of them, and about leaders that we follow who have big followerships, is that they're very authentic. Time and time again, I remember interviewing Buffett. He is exactly who he is on camera as he is off camera. And the same with Elon Musk, exactly the same on camera and off camera. Maybe you're seeing more than you would expect from him these days on camera.
Yeah.
But when they would come to the Bloomberg TV offices, they would just arrive on their own. They wouldn't have an entourage of PR people and handlers or
Mm.
bodyguards or anything like that. They were just genuinely, authentically themselves. And then the last thing I would say, which I think is really important for us to emulate, particularly as investors, I think as retail investors, is just their independent thinking. They are, fierce independent thinkers. They have their own opinions on various topics of the day, and you obviously see that with Elon Musk these days, and the same with Warren Buffett. So I think that independent thinking is extremely critical, and I think it's also what makes them stand out among leaders.
That's really interesting. I think Betty, independent thinker, is probably one of the unique things I found out when I was managing hedge fund about the people that actually have a very successful business. It was the independent thinking. It's like cutting the bureaucracy, especially in the boardrooms, and Warren Buffett spoke about it so many times that this is one of the biggest advantage that Berkshire Hathaway has, and this is, you literally spot on. Well, if someone is visiting your Twitter account, probably the second post there is your interview with Elon Musk in 2011. When he was very young person, no one probably had the headline about Elon Musk or thought about EV Tesla company. But I think it's fascinating to see what you thinking about the change that you saw from this interview, which I invite everybody to go and watch it, to today. I mean, obviously in his vision, as he literally
Mm.
changed the world in many ways, but interviewing a young person and now seeing this person literally rule the world in some places. What did you see changed?
Yeah, I sometimes joke that when I interviewed Elon Musk, that was Elon Musk 2.0. Now we're on Elon Musk 5.0 or something like that. So but I say that because, it was many, many years. I just want to caveat that it's been many years since I interviewed him. So I don't profess to know now, what he's thinking, but I can glean a little bit about about his change in leadership just from what I knew before, and in the context of my conversations with him before. So I think one of the things that's very distinguishing about Elon is that he is one of the few CEOs, we used to say, who not only can run a space company or a rocket ship company, but he actually can build the rocket ship. So, he literally can do that. And I think that's what's so, what has so fascinated people about him. I got to know him, as you had mentioned, about 10 years ago or so is when I had started interviewing him. And I did, I chose him and I was privileged to have him be interviewed for my book. And one of the lessons that he taught me that I think, that I still carry with me today, is something that we talked about, which is fear. So, I remember sitting in his office at SpaceX, and, I asked him I said to him, really, I said, you seem like the least fearful person in the world. I mean, you're running at that time two companies, and you brought one from the brink of bankruptcy, and you just seem like the least fearful person. And he kind of looked at me weird and said, what do you mean? I'm the most fearful person out there. And he said, but the biggest fear I have is the fear of regret. So I don't want to leave this earth regretting not doing anything, or not doing the things that I wanted to do. So, that might be why we see that, he's built several companies since then. I mean, he, has this drive and this ambition. And a lot of that comes from this fear of regret, which really inspired me on my journey as well as an entrepreneur, and the different, twists and turns I had in my career. But that really did inspire me.
The amazing part about it, I think, is that
Yeah.
he is literally also behind ChatGPT. I mean, artificial intelligence, right? I mean, he's the person who started that. I would probably ask him today what his biggest fear from a company that he left because it became to for-profit sort of business model that he didn't sided with. Fascinating. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, Elon, if you're watching, that's your cue to come on a future episode. Betty, as a leader with experience in public companies over the years, have you noticed any significant changes in the landscape of leadership? And if so, how do you sort of perceive those changes?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey where, I started off reporting on companies and reporting on CEOs and business leaders. And now I'm, sitting alongside them in the boardrooms and helping, advise them, and just talking to them about strategy and what what are the concerns on the
Hmm.
horizon. And I think, one of the things uh, that is true for public company CEOs is that tenures are getting shorter and shorter. It's a lot harder these days to be a public company CEO. I don't want to over dramatize it either, because it's not like it's going from 10 years to 5 years. It's more like going from 7.8 years to 7.2 or something along those lines. And don't quote me on these exact numbers, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the increment is shorter. But it does underline a common refrain you hear from public company CEOs, which is it's harder and harder to run your company for the long term when you also have to be concerned about hitting short term targets. So I think I think it is a struggle. It still is, though, for certain companies, the best way to execute strategy. I believe I drank the Kool-Aid when I was at the New York Stock Exchange, and I believe in this very firmly, that there's a certain profile of a company, and there's thousands of them out there, that ought to be public. And the reason for that, for the company side, is that it gives you a bigger platform. It gives you currency, M&A currency. And it overall, retains and rewards your employees with that public currency. For investors, it allows retail investors in particular the ability to participate in the economic, sort of the fruitful economic engine of this country. So, you as a retail investor can buy into companies that are the innovators of this economy. So I
Yeah.
think on both sides, that's, to me, that's the reason why I am such a big proponent of companies going public. And I think also the other aspect that, another reason why I'm a big proponent of public companies is I think it's just better governance. There's more transparency. I mean, certainly hear from companies the regulatory burden, the bureaucracy that comes with going public. At the same time, it does present a level of transparency to investors, a common level of transparency, and just greater governance, which I think protects investors overall. So to me, it's a win-win for both the companies and also for the investors.
Yeah, it seems the pros outweigh the cons of going public. Would you agree?
Well, it's again, if I'm looking from value investing perspective, it really depends what your strategy here. Obviously, if you have a fantastic business and it's making a free cash flow, so you're probably not gonna run doing go public because you're just growing fast, unless you really want to grow fast.
Yeah.
But for some companies, especially with this age of technology, things are moving much faster. I mean, today you can build some software that can make millions day after, and you just need the capital to really get the R&D team to be able to just, or sales team to be able to just keep up with the demand. Where if you build now, I don't know, an auto company, it will take time, will take investment, you need to prove yourself and everything. So there is a case for going public this more in this age, and in addition to that, I think retail investors and all investors, they want to participate, to be part of the game. And if those companies will not go public, how are we going to invest in them? And if you remember, you just recently did a conversation with leader with a drone company. John Haley, I think the
Yeah.
CEO name, and he's going to go IPO. And I have a friend approached me and said, Matti, I really want to invest in a drone company. It was by coincidence. And I'm like, okay, I'll search for a drone company in the stock market. I literally couldn't find one. I mean, there is a specific company that under his business, they have a drone setup, but there is no a drone company. And, then it's like hit me and said, okay, now I understand how people, what they want to be part of it. And unless you're VC, and you have a big capital, you just won't be part of the game. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and it levels the playing field, doesn't it? I think it's great. Betty, let's just move on, if we can, to female investing, and in your focus group discussions with women about investing, what have been the primary takeaways or insights you discovered regarding that participation in capital markets?
Yeah, it's just been a personal passion of mine, and some of that is informed just by my personal experience. As a business journalist for over 25 years, I never had the opportunity to really do any active investing, and because obviously, that would be a conflict of interest with the companies that I was reporting on.
Yeah.
So when I took off my journalist hat, I said, I have so much knowledge, or that I learned from people like Maddie and others about the markets and about companies. I want to apply that to my own portfolio. And what I quickly realized
Mm-hmm.
is that there's one thing about knowing about companies and financial markets, and there's another thing when you actually put your own money to work.
Yeah.
Those are two very different mindsets. And then that got me interested in just thinking about women and investing, period. And what I found, which I think, and these are generalities, so obviously there's deviations from these generalities, but generally speaking, women do lag men in investing in the markets. And the sort of what some of the findings show, that women, when they invest, they're long-term investors, and they want to invest in in companies that they believe in. Doesn't mean men don't invest that way either, but and I look at my own boys, who are now, they're adults now, and they do investing, and they've said to me, and I've heard this consistently with others, other male friends that I've talked to, is that sometimes investing is more like a sport, or it's betting, it's kind of a little bit more like a game. And I just don't think women really look at it that way. We're maybe a little bit more risk averse, so we're looking at putting that money put that money to work in the long term. The other thing I found about women and being women investors and first time investors is that the whole space of financial markets is very jargony. I was a little bit less sensitive to that because I kind of grew up in the business world, learning that jargon and getting used to it. But I think as a first time investor, it can be very off putting. And just, hearing all that jargon is enough to just keep you on the sidelines. I mean, it can just keep you from investing. So, when people have asked me questions like, how do I start investing? I mean, the first thing I say to them is, I'm not a financial advisor. So, this is just my personal opinion. But if you just want to, set it and forget it, just put your money into an index, ETF, and just never look at it again. And that's the easiest thing to do. But I do, when I say that, I also say, there is an element of fun to investing. There is a reward when it comes to it, finding good companies and putting your money to work. So, you can do that, put your money in an index fund, but then maybe take a little bit out, $1,000 or whatever, and start investing in individual stocks and just learn how to do it, because there is a really great satisfaction reward when it comes to investing, knowing of course that you can lose the money too. So whatever money you set aside, make sure you're comfortable with losing all of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's very true. Certainly about stock picking, or even just investing in indexes. There is that reward at the end, or potential reward, and I agree as well. By the way, about the jargon, I think it initially does put people off, but it feels like it's improving. And with the rise of the retail investor, I think the playing field is getting leveled, which is good. Matty, I know that we've got a lot of investment coming to the female world this year at eToro from a content point of view. Is there anything you can bring to light on that for our listeners?
When you are speaking and making a world only for women, it creates sort of the opposite than what it really needs to be, because if women and males are equal, so they need to be equally treated in every place. If it's a boardroom, if it's an investment, and for us, even here, we have Betty, we have me, and we have a host. So it doesn't necessarily mean on that. And I think what you achieve when you're doing that is that you just give an equal opportunity. Yeah, Sam, I mean, one of the projects that we have at eToro is the Popular Investor Program, where, people are managing their own money, and they're like a bit more expertise, and they have some people following them. And when I joined eToro 4 years ago, I worked with 22 popular investor, which we literally handpicked and looked for value investors. And I was really working with them one-on-one, and just train them more about investing in value investing, giving them more empowerment. And one of the person there were actually a female. Her name is Neza, and she was an amazing young lady, which doing her master's in biotechnology, brilliant person that just fell in love with value investing. So she read probably every single book about it. And when me and her worked very closely about those things in order to improve all the knowledge and everything about her investment style, she really needed this, like, the practical step, how I'm taking everything I read to actually doing it. And now, fast forward, she's one of our top performers as a popular investor. And if you sit with Neza, it's not like it was with Neza and it was with another 21 other young guys, which also become successful. So it has nothing to do female or male. They're both equal, in my opinion. It's just a matter if you're into it, if you want to do it, and what's the process as you learn. Now, what's the process says, it's a big word, because I know few things. I know, as what Betty just mentioned, is that females want to learn a bit more before they're jumping to the water. And this is something we're investing a lot now to really think and see, and we're doing surveys about it to understand what the female want to learn in the beginning, what she's missing, instead of just bringing somewhere that is very powerful, like with a 50-year of background. Not every female want to be that person. She just want to participate in the retail market and invest in the stock market. And you want to show also those baby steps in order to get her into this world. So this is definitely one thing we're going to do, which is the dedicating the knowledge for women about it. And just try to empower them in really live sessions, in events that we're doing. But again, not dedicate for that, is just try to show them that they can be part of it. And it's a hard task. Yeah, I'm not dreaming. I'm not saying tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to succeed in everything I'm doing, but we're doing a lot of investment in that.
I think that's great, Maddie, that you're taking that on. And you said a few things that really resonate with me. One is that, I mean, women want to make money just like men, right? So, I mean, that's the ultimate purpose. And, and the second thing that you mentioned, which I think is so important, and some women that I talked to mentioned this to me, is that, there aren't that many role models out there of, successful women investors that can inspire them, to take that first step. We keep mentioning Warren Buffett, and there's, obviously lots of other investors out there that we can talk about, but they're all men. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're still inspiring. But I think for a woman to see, another successful woman investor, that is, that's a little bit more of a connection for them. So to the extent that you're surfacing successful people like that on your platform, I think that that's going to help people, want to get on board and start their investing journey.
Betty, a question just on your own journey, as someone who at times obviously not professionally invested but involved in capital markets. Could you share that journey that you went on from an investment point of view? Any challenges that you faced along the way? Any advice for females entering this crazy, it seems, investing world as a bit of a side activity?
Yeah, well, I think just to pick up on that last comment, I think any successful investor will say that they've lost money along the way, and that's what helped make them successful investors. So I definitely was able to experience that at many points during my investment journey. So, but they were all good learning lessons for me. And a couple of things that really kind of stood out for me as I started to invest my own, my own money is just one that, number one is conviction. And that kind of is related to independent thinking. If you have found, a company that you really want to own, that you have a lot of conviction on, go big. That's the way you'll succeed, is to go big on it. The second thing is controlling your emotions. FOMO, the fear of missing out, is such a big, it's such a big emotion. And I have many times made the wrong decisions, based on FOMO. And so I've said to myself, every time I do something, I have to check myself. Am I doing this based on FOMO? And if I am not doing it. So basically, try as much as you can when you're investing to take your emotions out of it. Both fear, in terms of fear of missing out, or fear of losing your money. Because I've also sold too early, many times based on that emotion. So I think it's kind of what I said before about independent thinking. I think that's critical. And I think when you find something that you really have conviction on, go big or go home. And then the third is just, making sure you check your emotions and take as much of it out of as possible. It's hard to take out all of it, but take out as much as you can when you're putting your money to work.
How many people, men, women, whatever, you would hear just like Betty, really saying the truth about losing, about mistakes, about what she learned? And I think it's first, I'm proud that we have Betty saying that on our show, because really, and Betty mentioned that in the beginning, serious investors, they're not afraid of speaking about it. They're not afraid of understanding that this is part of the game. This is part of the business. But yeah, you always need to constantly learn from that. And, take super smart investor, they still making mistakes. No one is prevented from that. Definitely. So thanks, Betty, for sharing that. That was fascinating.
I'm glad to share my loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like you said,
Don't get
a lesson
Betty wrong.
learned is a
Don't
lesson
get
learned.
Betty wrong. She did amazing with her life. Amazing. We all can be only jealous with selling companies and everything. But yeah, that's a side note.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate the honesty, and like Maddie said, you've had an incredible career, and obviously one of the things you currently do and have done is held key roles at public companies. How does your perspective differ from that of an external investor, especially when you consider your positions as vice chair of the NYSE and CEO of Intercontinental Exchange?
Yeah, well, I was chief experience officer at
Yes, sorry, yes.
Intercontinental Exchange. And actually that brings me to the point, because actually the chief executive officer of Intercontinental Exchange is a man named Jeff Sprecher, who founded the company, grew the company through both organically and through M&A. And Intercontinental Exchange also owns the New York Stock Exchange. So, that is my connection to them. They had bought my company several years ago. So, but I meant that it brought me to this point, which is that in my view, and what I've seen is that I think companies that have had the founders continue to run those companies in the public markets And this is more anecdotal than it is, I haven't run any statistics on this, but they generally fare better
Hmm.
than others. And I think it's, probably obvious, right? I mean, founders are more, they have a bigger stake likely in these companies, so they got more skin in the game, and they've obviously built it from the ground up. So, so they have, real personal attachment and mission and purpose tied up with, with their own company. But Jeff Sprecher founded Intercontinental Exchange. You look at Jensen Huang and Nvidia, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. I mean, these are all founder CEOs, and those companies, generally speaking, are,
Yeah.
particularly Meta. You saw the earnings report, last week, are really killing it. Um, and then just in terms of my own experience, as I mentioned, I've been, when I was at the New York Stock Exchange, I started the board advisory council, the NYSE board advisory council. I co-founded that with two other directors at Intercontinental Exchange. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to bring in companies that were in the NYSE community who needed to expand their boards and also diversify their boards. So, adding more women, adding more minorities onto the board. And
Hmm.
that was really important to me, not just personally, but also from a governance perspective. So, on all the boards that I serve, I'm proud to say they're all very diverse. And it's a diversity not just along gender lines or race lines, but it's also very diverse in terms of the experiences that people bring to the table. And so I think in that respect, what I've noticed and what I've experienced myself is that when you have people come to the table with their different backgrounds, whether it's technology or consumer or legal or banking, it all creates a much more robust conversation and greater governance. So maybe to break it down for the people who are listening to this program and they're retail investors, it is important to take a look at the composition of the board. It is important to take a look at the people around the
Yeah.
table. Are these people around the table people that come with backgrounds that are important to the growth of the company? Are they people that you feel would be confident, would challenge the management team, and really make sure that there's robust discussion? I think that is an important element when you're looking at investing in companies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I think that is something that people are starting to, learn a little bit more about now when they're looking to invest in a company. Okay, well, look at the management, see what they're doing, see who they are. Matty, from your past experience that you've had as a hedge fund manager, have you observed any notable differences between, I mean, it's just male or female CEOs of public companies throughout your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is one, and it's bureaucracy. Something about women knows how to cut bureaucracy. I've seen it in General Motors with Marie Bra CEO. I've seen it with PepsiCo, Indra Nooyi. I've seen it with Meg Whitman, which did an amazing work with eBay. Yeah, there is something there that it's a bit more cut to the chase. So definitely, that's also proven right why female can succeed on those parts. And by the way, those are billionaires by their own, self-made. So definitely there is an effect there. I think there was a research once about female being a CEO. I would really need to find it, Betty, and share it with you. And there is one of the things I think it's about bureaucracy, but I'll try find it out and share it with you guys.
I think that's a really good point, Maddie.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Okay.
maybe women have to cut through the tape and break those ceilings. So maybe that's why they have lower tolerance for bureaucracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Betty, your book Work Smarts, which we mentioned a little bit about earlier, offers valuable insights. Could you briefly share the main concept or advice from the book that would resonate with our audience today?
Sure. So I wrote that book really for myself. I think a lot of authors might say that about their own books. I was listening to great life lessons from people like Buffett and Musk and others, and I thought to myself, why sequester this just for myself? Other people should be able to share in these nuggets of wisdom and these great pieces of advice that people were giving me directly. These would be conversations that would happen after the cameras turned off, and I would just have have life conversations with these leaders. Um, and I think if I can boil down sort of what are the principles, or what are the three big leadership lessons that I learned from interviewing, all these folks, is one of them I mentioned, which is the fear part, the fear of regret, that I learned from Elon Musk. So I call
Mhm.
that fear. So that's the first F. So there's three F's here. The second is finances, which is, I think most people do. Obviously, most people want to make a lot of money, or a lot of people want to make a lot of money, but I don't think everybody wants to aspire to be a billionaire, or to have the riches of. I mean, it would be great, but I think a lot of people would be happy if they had several $1,000,000. And what I mean by that is that
Yes.
the objective is to have enough money so that you can make choices independent of your financial situation. And so that's what I mean by finances, is the aspiration to be financially free, to have that freedom. And then the third thing I learned about from these leaders is flow. So flow is really about your mission, your purpose. When you're on your mission, when I'm sure I'm sure the two of you have experienced this yourself, but when you're doing work that really makes you feel like, this is my purpose, this is my mission, that's when you're in flow. And then it doesn't feel like work anymore. Like, Maddie has said many times, Buffett wakes up and tap dances to work. He's in flow with what he does. It's not a slog. And I think that's kind of nirvana for all of us, is that when we hit that flow, anything can happen. So those three F's were kind of the framework that came out of writing Work Smarts.
Betty, are there any specific principles from the book that you find particularly valuable for retail investors, and especially those in the sort of 25 to 40 age range?
Yeah, if I were to think about one kind of lesson to draw, outside of the three F's that I mentioned, one lesson to draw from these leaders that you can apply to investing, is that these leaders have said to me time and time again, do what you're good at. If you're good at it, focus on that, and hone in on it. And I take that primarily from Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan. He recounted a story in Work Smarts where he had left Citigroup and was contemplating his next move. And one of the positions that was open to him was to become the CEO of Home Depot. He loved the company, loved the founders, and had walked through the aisles of various Home Depots. And then at the end of the day, he said, you know what, I don't know anything about home improvement. I don't know anything about that. I know about finance, I know about the banking industry, but I don't know anything about home improvement. So he declined taking on that role, and then went on to take the role of CEO of Bank One. And then after that, of course, then became the CEO of JP Morgan, and probably is one of the best bank CEOs we've ever had in history. And so I think drawing from that you take the lesson of do what you're good at. So if you're investing, and you have a specialty in whatever it might be, mine is media, others may be retail or gaming, whatever expertise you have, you're probably going to be able to make money and to find the best investments in those industries that you have an expertise in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's very, very solid advice. Matty, a little birdie told me there's an intriguing story about someone paying for dinner with you. Could
Other
you
story.
could you
Oh my goodness.
share a little bit about that?
I'll I'll say the story, but I'll let Betty put it in context. I mean, yeah, after we met at Warren, so I'm visiting from time to time in New York. So I just said to Betty, you know what? Next time I'm in New York, let's catch up and just meet and eat. And then we went to it at I think it was Nobu, right? The Japanese restaurant. It was actually close to my hotel, and I met Betty there. So we ate and everything. It was fun. It was really nice catching up. And then we coming to, the check is coming, and I'm like about to pay. And Betty, no, leave it to me. I'm like, what do you mean leave it to me? I'm gonna pay. And she's like, no, leave it to me. And I'm like, man, what do you mean? I'm gonna pay for that. And yeah, so she paid for that. Now, Betty, put it in context. So
All right. Well, number one, Maddie, welcome to the 21st century. Women do pick up the check
I
sometimes.
agree. I agree with that. I agree. It was in the 20th century. You remember, Betty? You were young. I was old person. So
Amazing. Well, look, on that note, we'll wrap it there for today. Betty, Matty, thank you so much for joining us.
thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Betty.
Maddie.